and why the presidential candidates have moved from 18 to 8, and that is what we are delving into here on Weekend Express. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's focus on the fact that we have 8 presidential candidates now, and they have been divided into 4. 4 of them will be submitting their nomination papers today. Among them is Raila Odinga. Your thoughts on how this is likely to play out? Because yesterday we saw in the dailies a lot of the headlines talking about how this is probably Raila Odinga's last chance.
True, it is his last chance by what we think and by what he has said. Raila has said more than once that this is his last bullet. And I think he has put his all into it. This time he's not going to reserve anything for the future. He's going into this battle knowing it could be his last, both at home and nationally. Even his support base expects him to do his last battle. I'm sure they will not be willing to put so much effort to fight for him one more time.
Right.
So anybody going against Raila this time must know this is the battle of Raila's life.
Right, and of course, there's 7 other people who will be going against Raila Odinga, so to speak. But let's begin with the fact that we had 18 presidential hopefuls, and now that has gone down to 8. And that's because we had independent candidates who failed to make it because of failing to obtain the required signatures. And this has been quite a controversial issue, with some saying that independent candidates should not be required to have such signatures. Your thoughts on the issue?
No, I think they must have it because the law says so. However, you remember what was in contention was this idea that these signatures must come from people who do not belong to any other political party. But you know, anybody can vote for anyone. If I belong to any political party and at the presidential level I choose to vote somebody who is not in my party, that is acceptable.
Right.
It also follows that if a voter anywhere decides to vote for somebody who is not in his political party, that is acceptable. So I think there was a court ruling on Friday on that issue.
Right.
However, the very people who have not managed to bring their signatures, we can't forgive them because they knew before that they would need 2,000 signatures from 24 counties. By the way, that's an uphill task that anybody who just wants to go to this seat for the purposes of fame and such things, I think this time they have been caught
flat-footed, so to speak. And so we have 2 independent presidential candidates. That is Michael Mwaura and Joseph Nyaga, both of them running as independents. And like you mentioned, it's an uphill task to get all these signatures from 24 counties. What does it mean in terms of the reception from the electorate to independent presidential candidates?
I think these ones are just joyriders. There are a lot of free publicity that comes with running as a presidential candidate, and I think they want to enjoy that. They will get security and all such things. But in essence, we all know, I think almost the last Kenyans knows, these are joyriders. They are not going to get any votes worth the effort that they are going to put in it.
All right. And of course, the bigger question after this for the IEBC, of course, after receiving the nomination papers, we still have the question of integrity that has been coming up for the better part of the week. That list was submitted to the IEBC, or the recommendation rather was submitted to the IEBC on Thursday this week. And I understand as of today, those who are in that blacklist may begin receiving phone calls from returning officers telling them that they may be barred from participating in the presidential elections. Now, earlier on, we also read a story here where we have Wakoli asking Raila Odinga, even as he points out to cases of corruption within Jubilee, he should look at his, Washiali rather, he should look at his own backyard and all the corruption scandals that he's been implicated in. So in terms of integrity and even clearing these presidential candidates, do Kenyans know where they stand in terms of integrity?
I think Washiali is being very selective in asking Raila to look at his backyard and see who is corrupt there or not. First of all, Washiali must know that at the electoral level, somebody has to be found to be culpable, has to be found first. And this can only be done by a competent court of law. So I think Washiali was just being mischievous, having seen a lot of TV cameras. He wanted to steal the show. And of course he did, because he was on news on every channel in the evening. Right. He knew he was not going anywhere with that.
That's an interesting take on the integrity question, that one must be found to be culpable, which means that even the many political hopefuls that Kenyans are pointing a finger at in terms of questions of integrity may actually get a clean pass because they have not been found culpable of any of the allegations.
They are going to do it. In 2013, President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto had been inducted at the Hague, but they still went, contested, won, and cleared themselves while they were in office. In fact, you remember the Act also says that somebody must have not been convicted in the last 6 months. So conviction is also an issue here.
Right.
So I think this is just politics to divert some people, to create fear in some candidates so that they can panic and lose the ball. But in actual sense, these things are going nowhere. All these people will be candidates unless they are taken to court.
So is it pretty much a process in futility? Because many are waiting on the IEBC to give the list of those names who will be barred from contesting. Do you think we'll actually have
Michelle,
any of the
there's no process even here. These are things that are being said. These are lists that are being thrown out around. Because if this were to work, anybody will just come and say, so-and-so, we think you are this. Somebody has to be found to be corrupt. Somebody has to be found to have committed some impropriety in his office or somewhere else.
And of course, the bigger question was why now? Of course, IEBC did not have the list before, but the question is why do it at the last stages when the period is 72 days to the elections. The period is so short between when they can carry out these investigations and actually find one culpable of any of the questions of integrity being leveled against them.
I think IEBC is also being influenced by political players too much. Probably somebody in the background is pulling strings, performing some magic behind them to let them do what they do or say what they say. But even their own website has the rules, and they say someone has to be found.
Right. Culpable of,
yes.
So none of them, of course, it's innocent until proven guilty in the country. Let me pick your mind on the issue of voter verification, which is also happening in tandem with this process as well. And there's been a lot of dismissal from a section of political aspirants themselves in terms of voter verification, saying that those who are urging their supporters to go verify their votes are people who do not trust the IEBC. I mean, if we have supporters and political aspirants saying such things, are we on the right track in this electoral process?
Voter verification, I suspect by now that there's some foul play somewhere. I think you are aware that the original director of ICT at IEBC was suspended, I hear, for 30 days, and I don't know why it is 30 days and not until after election or less, and replaced by someone else. I think the language used shows that it was insubordination, because if the bosses want you to do something and you fail to do it, it means there's either somebody whose shadow is bigger than this, your bosses, standing behind you, or you just somebody who has been paid or anything. Because voter verification is necessary for both parties.
Right.
All the candidates, it is necessary that it is done.
All right, so that's in terms of voter verification. Let's come back to the IEBC receiving these nomination papers today. In terms of the criteria and what they're looking at from these 8 presidential candidates, what is IEBC expecting?
I think the key thing there is somebody has to appear there with an original certificate to show that this guy is a graduate. That is a key thing. It's also important that they appear there before the commission. The signatures had been submitted a little earlier. Some of them in fact, have fallen by the wayside. It is also important that you bring your national ID, the passports, to show that you are Kenyan and you are not a dual citizen and such things. But I think it's just a formality. By now, we know who is going to be in and who is going to be out.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So what next in terms of the electoral process? We've had the presidential candidates today and tomorrow submitting their nomination papers. Where does the country go from here?
Definitely 28th is today, and I think campaigns will just begin. It had begun, but it was unofficial, but now it will begin in earnest. Like the one that Raila had in Pokot, and they could say they are just functions, but now we will have campaigns.
So
we
official
will be asking
campaign
for
season
votes.
has begun, and Kenyans would ask, we've seen campaigns for the past 1 year. What do you mean campaign season is officially beginning today? Now, with campaign season comes a lot of activity. Political rallies come with a lot of incitement in some cases, a lot of violence in some cases among the youth. several agencies, of course, will be mandated in ensuring that everything is in order, but it is an uphill task, especially for the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. Talk to us about what we're expecting to see in the peace process and ensuring that all is well until the August 8th elections.
I think who is peaceful and who is not, who is inciting and who is not. The line is very, very gray. The line is very thin. Because, for example, the other day, Kaparo was complaining, Kaparo and the team were complaining, and Kaiseri about the 10,000 strong, that is inciting. I do not think that is inciting, but they thought so. And there are some other things that people say, which they call hate speech. I don't know whether it is the literal hate, or it is just, there are some words that are defined as hate speech. When Kaparo and Kaiseri says that 10 million strong is inciting Kenyans, anybody going to any contest, anywhere in the world, must show his supporters the optimism that he's going to win. He must shout over everybody that I am the winner at the end of it, let's go and celebrate. That is normal. And we have done that before. We have told our supporters before that this time round, we are going to be in State House after counting.
Right.
But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. People must expect everything.
But I mean, doesn't the onus also stop with the political candidates themselves in terms of accepting the reality on the ground, in terms of accepting defeat, and in terms of ensuring that their supporters are on their best behavior?
But you can't do much about it, because take, for example, Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, who have half of the registered voters in their support. There's not much they can do to their supporters to keep peace, but they can only urge them. They can only urge their supporters to keep peace, which both parties have done.
Right.
But how serious is that urge? That one is another story.
All right. I'd like to move to just something else. Earlier on, we had Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka coming out and expressing concern that the surge of independent candidates in the political scene is seemingly going to lead into some disarray in the political scene, because it hasn't been interpreted very clearly in the Constitution. So there's been questions of, should we have a majority of independents? Then what happens to the positions of majority and minority leaders? What shift are we likely to see with these independent candidates after the August 8th elections?
First of all, I always believe that when something is never done in good faith, it always backfires like it has done. This act that outlawed party hopping was done in utmost bad faith. This is the only place where I disagree with both principals and every political player who supported the outlawing of party hopping. Now, you see, it is exactly these very party leaders who are now suffering today, because the surge in independent candidates is like a third force. It is like another political party that is not properly registered. Even sometimes when I look at the electoral laws and they say a person must be a member of a political party or be an independent candidate. See, those are the only two options.
Right.
Either a political party or an independent candidate. So that clause should have been struck out. So that
those were saying the formation of the Kenya Alliance of Independent Candidates might as well register itself as a political party. But wasn't the party hopping law put in terms of upholding democracy in the country? I mean, what democracy is there if party hopping is as open as it was before?
Yeah, but cartelling people's movements, is, I don't think it is democracy. And democracy must go hand in hand with freedom and liberty. Without that, democracy is stifled. You know, when you go to get married, you must be supported by some other things. So democracy is supported by freedom and liberty. So if you don't have the liberty to do what you want when you want to do it, the freedom to move when you want to move, then that is no democracy. That is stifled democracy. Today, if we had allowed party hopping, for example, in the CORD strongholds, or NASA strongholds, we would be having somebody with PDP, somebody with this party. So they would not present a strong, threatening force to the popular party. But today they do. When the word independent candidate is mentioned more times than even NASA these days.
Absolutely. And that being said, of course, we've had a lot of resistance, and incumbents would tell you independents are no factor. I mean, they won't bring any change. Let's talk about the situation and the reality on the ground. What are these major political parties going to wake up to on the August 9th or August 10th, whenever the results will be announced?
If they don't come out to deal with it, it will be a disaster. Just imagine we walk into parliament and you find out of the 290 elected, maybe 150 are independents. Because voters are sadists. They can decide to punish
Absolutely.
very
Look at
key
what
people.
happened in Nyeri County during the nomination process.
Even in Nairobi here, even the whole country, the people you think should not even hold public offices are the ones who are elected even before you wake up in the morning on the voting day.
Right.
So you go to parliament, but there are some disasters that are going to happen. Take, for example, we assign nomination slots according to the number of members a party takes to parliament. Then you find ODM ends up in parliament with maybe 40 MPs, Jubilee ends up with 100 MPs, and the rest are independents. So these two candidates, these two parties, they are going to share the political parties' funding. I think it is 300 million plus. Just those two with those. Then the rest of the MPs are going to be outside.
Right.
Then there is also something called contributions by members to their political party. It is also going to be affected because it is the actually elected members who contribute to their own political parties.
Right.
So if these parties were earning maybe 100 million every month from their elected members, they are going to earn maybe 20 million. So those very political party heads, party leaders, are the ones who are suffering from their having coerced these people to pass the anti-party hopping bill.
Party law. So what kind of campaigns are we likely to see now? Presidential candidates are submitting the nomination papers, but we've also had many of them, of course, being party leaders, say that they will not campaign for independent candidates. The likes of Raila Odinga saying that, or advocating rather for 6-piece voting, ODM, ODM, ODM. But we also have a section of independent candidates who, as much as they're independent, also pledge their allegiance to either Raila Odinga or Uhuru Kenyatta. But with the stance of these major political parties, is that going to divide the vote for the presidential candidates?
No. First of all, one thing that you need to know, that these independent candidates saying they are going to support Raila or Uhuru, they are saying so that the people can vote for them. You know, the people of Kenya only value the presidency. These ones, they can vote anyone. For example, in my constituency, anyone voted there is a member of that constituency. The only thing that they are fighting for with other communities across Kenya is the presidency.
Right.
Even sometimes when I hear people tell Uhuru and Raila, oh, you know, if you don't support the independent candidates, then, you know, there will be voter apathy. Let me tell you, these supporters of Uhuru, the diehard ones, like the Kikuyu, and those ones, the high ones of Raila, like the Luo, they go to the voting stations because they are going to vote for Raila.
Right.
Then they go and find, oh, MP is also here. So this is just threatening them. But the whole idea, these people go to the voting stations to vote for these people. I remember last year, when 2013, when they were voting for Uhuru Kenyatta, a very senior journalist told me that, you know, these people you see lining up in Kiambu, they have not come here to vote for Uhuru Kenyatta. They have come here to vote against Raila Odinga. So these are issues that happen. People go to vote for those presidential candidates.
Now, that being said, it's very clear, especially since the nomination process, that the Kenyan electorate is becoming more and more aware of their rights and the issues that should drive an election. And case in point, once again, the situation in Nyeri County, only one member of parliament out of 26 remained, and only one MCA out of about 40 MCAs. And that was a landslide. I mean, it's never been seen before. That being said, the 8 presidential candidates that we have, are we likely to see a situation where Kenyans decide to lean towards the one who addresses the issues closest to them, as opposed to just traditionally voting along ethnic lines?
Incidentally, even today, Kenyans will still vote according to ethnic lines. And the presidential candidates are exploiting the fact that majority of Kenyans are too ignorant to decipher issues, to look at issues before they vote. The first issue they're going to look at is this, our man, and who else is supporting him, we go with. That is what is still happening at the presidential level. But at the lower level, things are changing pretty fast. I can see they are beginning to punish those who have offended them in their offices in the period that has ended. But remember, sometimes they forget that I'm punishing candidate A who has been in this seat and has committed offenses without caring who is replacing him. So they just say, okay, so-and-so must go home.
Right.
Then they go for the next person who is making the loudest noise and say, okay, replace so-and-so, he has offended us. I do not want to mention names here, but I have seen it that because they want to punish the incumbent, they have voted somebody who is worse than the incumbent, or somebody they don't know. So when he gets into office, he becomes worse.
Right. Final comments as we wind up. What would you advise the Kenyan electorate in terms of picking the best presidential candidate out of the 8 that we have?
I think every Kenyan, wherever they can be found, they know what they should expect from their own presidents. Presidency does not really need very serious technical competence, but what it needs is integrity. What it needs is somebody the public can trust with their wealth. What it needs is this person who is fair to every Kenyan, from Mombasa to Kisumu, from Voi to Mandera. Somebody who can have the correct things. It's a matter of goodwill, really. Nobody is being trained to be a president. And a president has a lot of technocrats to work and help him do the work. So it's a matter of goodwill that I want to do this thing in the best way possible, in the best interest of Kenyans, as experts may have advised.
All right, and so the electorate will have